He threatened me. I only asked for free gas.
Officer, check camera 4.
Ma'am, this station belongs to him. You are under arrest. No, that cannot be right.
Fill the tank, or I swear I will make this ugly little place disappear. Diane Whitaker's voice sliced through the glass service window of Hale's Fuel and Market loud enough for every customer at Pump 3 to turn around. Marcus Elijah Hale stood behind the counter in a faded gray work shirt, one hand wrapped in a paper towel, the other resting flat beside the register. He did not raise his voice. He did not move toward her. He only looked at the woman outside the window, then at the black SUV blocking 2 pumps behind her. "Ma'am," he said, calm and low, "you have to pay for the gas like everyone else." Diane laughed once, sharp and cold. "Everyone else?" She stepped closer to the window, her gold bracelet flashing under the canopy lights. "Look around. I live across the street in a house worth more than this entire corner. Your station lowers our property values every single day. The least you can do is fill my tank for free." The evening rush had gone quiet. A delivery driver froze with a coffee halfway to his mouth. A mother pulled her little girl closer beside the soda machine. 2 teenagers near the air pump stopped laughing. Inside the store, 19-year-old Luis Ramirez stood behind Marcus, holding a roll of receipt paper so tightly it bent in his hands. Marcus looked tired, not afraid. Tired in a way that came from hearing the same kind of voice for too many years. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows. Grease marked the side of his wrist. A small silver key ring hung from his belt, heavier than a clerk's keys should have been. Above him, camera 4 blinked red in the corner, watching everything. Diane saw none of it. She saw the old sign, the cracked tile floor, the black man behind the glass, and decided the whole place belonged beneath her. "I'm not asking again," she said. "Turn on Pump 2. No, that one word made the air change. Diane's smile vanished. "Excuse me." Marcus slid the pump receipt toward the slot beneath the window. "You are holding up customers. Move your vehicle or pay for your fuel." For a second, it looked as if someone might step in. Mrs. Anita Brooks, a retired bus driver who had been coming to the station for 20 years, took one step forward from the coffee counter. "Diane, leave that man alone," she said. Diane spun on her. "Stay out of this, Anita. You people always protect each other." The words landed harder than the first insult. A man near the lottery machine looked down. Someone outside lifted a phone and began recording. No one spoke. Have you ever watched a room decide, in silence, whether a person deserves dignity? Diane turned back to Marcus and pointed a red-painted nail at him. "You hear me? I know the police. I know the city council. I know exactly how to get men like you removed." Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. "This is your final warning. Leave the property." Behind him, Luis whispered, "Mr. Hale, maybe I should call someone." Diane caught only 2 words. "Mr. Hale." Her eyes narrowed, but before the meaning could settle, she slapped her palm against the glass. "Do not pretend you have authority here. You are a gas station attendant in a dirty shirt." Marcus reached under the counter. Not fast, not threatening, just enough to press a small black button beside the register. The tiny DVR under the shelf gave one soft beep. Luis heard it. His eyes flicked to the camera, then back to Diane. Diane heard the beep too. "What was that?" she snapped. Marcus did not answer. That made her angrier. She stepped away from the window, grabbed the long metal squeegee from the bucket beside Pump 2, and held it like a bat. A customer gasped. The little girl began to cry. "Ma'am," Marcus said, "put that down." Diane's face twisted. "Or what?" She swung. The first hit cracked the service window from corner to corner. The sound exploded across the station like a gunshot. Everyone flinched. Coffee spilled across the counter. A bag of chips dropped to the floor. Marcus lifted his arm as tiny fragments sprayed inward. A thin red line opened across the back of his hand. He looked at the blood, then back at Diane. She swung again. This time the glass gave way. It burst inward, raining across the gum display. The lottery slips, the small frame photograph near the register that showed an older black man standing proudly beside the same pumps decades earlier. The photo fell face down into the glass. Luis lunged forward. "Stop! He did nothing to you." Diane stepped back, breathing hard, then looked around at the phones, the faces, the silence. Something changed in her expression. Rage became performance. She threw the squeegee onto the ground and clutched her own wrist. "He attacked me," she shouted. "You all saw it. He threatened me and broke the glass." Marcus stared at her through the jagged frame of the window. "Diane," he said quietly, "do not do this. Do not say my name like you know me." She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers that were not shaking from fear. "I'm calling 911. Mrs. Brooks tried again. The camera saw everything." Diane snapped her head toward the older woman. "Shut up." The phone connected. Diane's voice turned fragile, breathless, practiced. "Please send police to Hale's Fuel. There is a black man here threatening customers. He broke the window. I think he is dangerous." Outside, red and blue lights appeared faster than anyone expected, washing over the pumps, the broken glass, and Marcus's bleeding hand. Two officers stepped out. The younger one, Officer Tyler Briggs, looked first at Diane's expensive coat, then at Marcus behind the shattered window. His hand moved toward his cuffs. "Sir," Briggs said, "step out from behind the counter." Louise pointed at the camera. "Officer, you need to see the video." "I said step out," Briggs repeated. Marcus slowly raised both hands, palms open, blood sliding toward his wrist. Officer Grace Miller, older and quieter, looked past him at the blinking red light of camera 4. Then she looked down at the fallen photograph, the heavy key ring, and the business license half visible beneath the glass on the wall. Marcus took one step toward the door. Diane smiled like she had already won. Briggs reached for Marcus's arm. And just before the cuff touched his wrist, Officer Miller's radio crackled from dispatch. "Unit 12, confirm location owner record is loading now. Name begins Marcus Elijah." The whole station went still. "Marcus Elijah." The dispatcher's voice broke under a burst of static, and for one thin second, everyone in the station stopped breathing. Officer Tyler Briggs still had one hand near the cuffs. Diane Whitaker's smile faded, not completely, but enough for Marcus to see fear trying to hide behind it. Phone stayed raised. The red light on camera 4 blinked above the broken window. Blood slid down Marcus's wrist and touched the old photograph lying face down in the glass. He did not reach for it. He did not ask anyone to believe him. He only looked at that picture like something inside him had been struck harder than the window. 6 hours earlier, before the glass, before the lie, before Diane used the police like a weapon, Marcus had been standing in the small kitchen behind the station, crushing a white pill in a spoon for his mother. Evelyn Hale sat at the table in a blue robe, her silver hair pinned back, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea. The morning light came through the blinds in narrow gold lines. On the refrigerator, a pharmacy receipt was held up by a magnet shaped like a gas pump. Insulin, blood pressure medicine, 2 balances due. Marcus saw them every morning. He never mentioned them unless Evelyn did. "You are opening early again," she said. Marcus stirred the medicine into applesauce. "Only for the school buses." Mrs. Brooks said the city route changed. Evelyn watched him with the tired eyes of a woman who had buried a husband and then watched her son inherit both the business and the burden. "Your father used to say that Pump 1 knew every secret in this neighborhood." Marcus almost smiled. "Pump 1 still talks too much." She laughed softly, then coughed into a napkin. The sound pulled the smile from his face. He reached for her water before she asked. That was Marcus. Quiet, prepared, always one step ahead of pain. On the wall beside the door hung his faded work shirt, washed so many times the name patch had softened at the edges. Below it sat a brown leather notebook, cracked at the spine. His father's notebook. James Hale had written fuel deliveries, repair costs, customer debts, church donations, and little rules for survival in the margins. Marcus opened it before every shift. That morning, his fingers stopped on a line written in thick black ink. Never let them make you beg on land you paid for. He closed the notebook slowly and slipped it under the counter beside a folder marked Whitaker complaints. 8 months of letters. Photographs. Dates. Times. Every false report Diane had made, because she wanted the station gone. A lesser man might have shouted. Marcus documented. A weaker man might have sold. Marcus stayed. By noon, Luis arrived with a backpack over one shoulder and worry on his face. Mr. Hale. She left another note on Pump 2. Marcus took the paper. One sentence, typed in capital letters. Last chance to leave quietly. He folded it once, placed it in the folder, and locked the drawer. That tiny click sounded like a promise. If you have ever seen someone judged by a uniform, a worn shirt, an old building, or the color of their skin before they even spoke, then you already understand why Marcus stayed silent so long. Silence was not surrender. Sometimes it was a record being built one page at a time. The first kindness of the day came from Child. A little boy buying a soda looked at the old photo behind the register and asked, "Is that your dad?" Marcus nodded. Yes. The boy studied the smiling man in the picture. He looks proud. Marcus looked away for half a second. It was a small mercy. Then Diane's SUV rolled into the lot, glossy and black, blocking Pump 2 like it owned the ground beneath it. Back in the present, the same photo lay in broken glass. Officer Grace Miller stepped closer to the radio, her eyes moving from the blood on Marcus's hand to the business license half hidden behind a spiderweb of cracks. Diane lifted her chin and spoke over the static. "Officer, why are we waiting? Arrest him." Marcus Ben at last picked up his father's photograph and turned it over. A shard of glass had cut across James Hale's face. Behind the counter, the DVR gave a second soft beep. Camera 4 had finished saving the file. Officer Miller heard it. So did Diane. And this time, Diane looked straight at the camera. The second beep from the DVR seemed louder than the sirens outside. Diane Whitaker looked at camera 4 as if it had just looked back at her. Officer Grace Miller noticed. So did Marcus. So did the customers who had been pretending not to see. For years, people in this neighborhood had been very good at pretending. They pretended not to notice when Marcus was followed through the hardware store while buying parts for his own pumps. They pretended not to hear when new residents called Hale's Fuel that corner problem at city meetings. They pretended it was normal for a black man in a faded work shirt to be questioned more than the men in suits who wanted his land. Marcus had learned the shape of those looks. The quick scan of his clothes. The pause before people said his name. The way some customers placed cash on the counter instead of in his hand. He never corrected them with anger. He counted change. He held doors. He fixed flat tires in the rain. He gave coffee to night shift nurses and let school bus drivers pay on Friday when their checks cleared. Still, to people like Diane, kindness looked like weakness. Old tile meant failure. A work shirt meant obedience. A quiet voice meant permission. "Officer," Diane said, forcing her voice high and wounded, "why is no one restraining him?" Officer Briggs kept his eyes on Marcus. "Sir, step outside." Luis moved closer to the broken window. "He is bleeding." Briggs snapped, "Step back." That short command hit Luis like a slap. He froze. Mrs. Anita Brooks took one careful breath near the coffee counter. Her eyes went to Marcus, then to the camera, then to Diane's phone still clutched in her hand. "She broke it," Anita said. Her voice was small, but it was there. Diane turned on her. "You did not see anything." Anita's mouth opened, then closed. Fear did what fear always does. It made the truth feel expensive. Officer Miller crouched near the broken glass. She picked up the metal squeegee with 2 fingers, studying the handle. Then her gaze drifted to the wall behind the counter, where the business license sat behind cracked plastic. A jagged line ran across the frame, hiding part of the printed name. Marcus watched her see it. He did not speak. Outside, a couple in tennis clothes whispered beside a white sedan. One of them said, "This place has always been trouble." A teenage boy still recording whispered back, "The lady is lying." His mother pulled his arm down. "Do not get involved." That was the world Marcus lived in. Some people knew. Some people cared. Most people calculated the cost of caring and looked away. Diane saw the hesitation spreading and stepped into it. "This is exactly what I warned the council about," she said. "This station attracts danger. Look at him. Look at this mess." Marcus glanced down at his father's photograph in his hand. The glass cut across James Hale's face like an old wound reopened. He wiped blood from the frame with his thumb, slow and gentle. Officer Miller saw that too. "Sir," she said, softer than Briggs, "is there footage from this camera?" Marcus looked at the DVR under the counter. Yes, ma'am. A ripple moved through the room. Micro hope. Small. Fragile. Real. Then Diane stepped forward. That camera is private property, and I do not consent to being recorded. Luis finally found his voice. It is a gas station. There's signs on every pump. Diane pointed at him. Be quiet, stock boy. The room went cold again. Officer Briggs reached for Marcus's elbow. Outside. Now. Marcus placed the photograph on the counter beside the blood-spotted receipt and walked toward the door with both hands visible. Each step crunched softly over glass. As he passed the register, the small monitor behind Luis flickered from the save file menu to a frozen image from camera 4. Diane was on the screen, arm raised, metal squeegee caught in mid-swing. Officer Miller looked up just as the image froze. Then the monitor went black. The monitor went black, and Diane Whitaker breathed like someone had just been handed back control. Convenient, she said. The video disappears the second it proves nothing. Officer Tyler Briggs tightened his grip on Marcus's elbow and guided him through the doorway, past the shattered frame, into the cold wash of red and blue lights. Marcus did not resist. He stepped carefully, palms open, broken glass crunching under his boots. The customers outside watched him like a verdict had already been reached. Some held phones. Some looked away. The little girl near the soda machine whispered, "Mom, why are they taking him?" Her mother did not answer. Officer Grace Miller stayed inside the store, staring at the dead monitor. Luis stood behind the counter, pale and shaking. "It was there," he said. "You saw it, right?" Her arm was up. Diane laughed from the doorway. "A blurry screen means nothing, sweetheart." Marcus turned his head slightly. His voice stayed quiet. "The monitor is not the recording." Miller looked at him. Diane rolled her eyes. "Listen to him. Now he is a security expert." Marcus nodded once toward the bottom shelf beneath the register. "The DVR saves locally. Camera 4 has a battery backup. If the screen went black, someone tripped the display cable or killed the monitor feed. The file is still in the drive." The words landed differently than his earlier silence. Officer Miller's expression changed. Not belief. Not yet. Attention. Briggs frowned. "How would you know that?" Diane cut in fast. "Because he works here. He pushes buttons and mops floors. That does not make him innocent." Marcus did not look at her. He looked at the glass on the floor, the angle of the largest pieces, the metal squeegee near pump 2, the blood on his own hand. "Glass struck from outside falls inward," he said. "The handle has her prints." The camera caught the first swing before the display died. Miller looked down at the glass again, then at the squeegee, then at Diane's bare fingers wrapped around her phone. For the first time, Diane hid her hand behind her coat. Mrs. Anita Brooks saw it. Her eyes widened. She took one step forward, then stopped when Briggs glanced at her. Fear pulled her back again. A tiny hope had entered the store, but it had nowhere safe to stand. Miller crouched under the counter and found the DVR. A small green light blinked behind the metal grate. "Luis," she said, "do you know the password?" "Luis Gualoth." "No, ma'am. Only Mr." He stopped himself. Diane heard the pause. Her eyes sharpened. "Only who?" Marcus looked at Luis, and Luis looked down. The silence gave Diane a new weapon. She stepped toward the counter, pointing at the folder half visible in the locked drawer. "What is that? Is he keeping files on me?" Marcus said, "Do not touch that drawer." Diane smiled. "Oh, now he gives orders." She reached over the broken window frame anyway and tugged at the drawer handle. It did not open, but the label showed for 1 second. Whitaker Complaints. Officer Miller saw it. Briggs saw it. Diane saw it too, and her face hardened. "He has been stalking me," she said loudly. "He planned this." The crowd murmured. The doubt returned, thick and ugly. Miller stood and looked at Marcus longer this time. "Sir, if there's a save file, I need access to it." Marcus's jaw tightened. He was still bleeding, still outside the counter, still being watched like the problem. "The backup keypad is behind the framed license," he said. Miller turned toward the wall. The cracked plastic frame hung crooked, hiding most of the printed name beneath it. She lifted it carefully. Behind it was a small black keypad, blinking. On the tiny screen, 4 words appeared, Enter owner access code. Diane stopped breathing. Marcus took one slow step toward it, and Briggs moved to block him. Officer Tyler Briggs moved in front of Marcus before he could reach the keypad. Stay where you are. His voice carried across the forecourt, hard enough to make the customers outside fall silent again. Marcus stopped with his hands open, one palm streaked red, the other steady at his side. The small screen behind the cracked license frame kept blinking. Enter owner access code. Diane Whitaker stared at those words for half a second too long, then recovered with a bitter little laugh. Owner access, she said. That is cute. Every cheap store has a manager code. She turned toward the people filming. Do you see this? He's trying to hide behind a machine because he knows what he did. Officer Grace Miller did not look away from the keypad. Mrs. Whitaker stepped back from the counter. Diane ignored her. No, I will not step back while this man manipulates evidence. She pointed at Marcus again. He broke that window. He cut himself on purpose. He has a file with my name on it. That is not normal. Luis's face tightened. Because you have been harassing us for months. Diane snapped toward him. Say one more word, and I will make sure you never work in this town again. The threat landed in the store like a dropped weight. Luis looked at Marcus, and Marcus gave him the smallest shake of his head. Do not take the bait. Do not give her more sound a twist. Mrs. Anita Brooks took another step forward, her hand trembling around her coffee cup. Officer, I saw her swing the squeegee. Diane turned slowly, smiling without warmth. Anita, you are retired, are you not? Fixed income? I would hate for someone to tell the housing board that you're causing problems at commercial crime scenes. Anita's mouth closed. Her eyes, filled with shame before fear, pushed her backward. Diane had found the room's weakest places and pressed each one. Outside, the teenager with the phone whispered, "She is lying." His mother pulled him behind her. Stop recording. Marcus watched all of it. He watched truth shrink in public. He watched people choose safety over justice, then hate themselves for it. He had seen that look before at city hearings, when Diane had stood beneath bright municipal lights in a cream blazer and called his customers transients, while everyone pretended not to know what she meant. Officer Briggs took the cuffs from his belt now. Sir, until we sort out the footage, you need to come with me. Miller looked up. Tyler, wait. Diane cut in fast. Finally, someone here understands procedure. Marcus's eyes moved to the DVR, then to the license frame, then to the drawer Diane had tried to open. His voice stayed quiet. Officer Miller, the backup drive is not in the monitor. It is in the safe under the counter. Diane's face changed. Just a flicker. But Miller saw it. The safe? She asked. Diane stepped between Miller and the broken opening. Absolutely not. You're not letting him access anything. He could erase it. Marcus said, the safe has a tamper log. Briggs frowned. And what? It records every failed entry, every opening, every power loss. Marcus looked at Diane for the first time since the glass broke. Every attempt. The crowd murmured again, but Diane raised her voice above it. Listen to him. He sounds rehearsed because this was planned. She reached into her purse and pulled out her own phone. I have friends on the city council. I'm calling them now. Miller's radio crackled. Dispatch tried again, but the words broke apart beneath static. Unit 12, owner record. Hales, Diane spoke louder, drowning it out. This station has been a problem for years. He has complaints. Real complaints. I filed them myself. Marcus lowered his eyes for 1 second, not in defeat, but in pain. She had said too much. Officer Miller heard it. Luis heard it. Even Anita looked up. Diane realized it late. Her mouth tightened. Briggs clicked one cuff around Marcus's wrist. The sound was clean and final. Outside, he said. Marcus did not fight. As Briggs pulled him away from the counter, Marcus's wounded hand brushed the fallen photograph of James Hale. Under it, hidden beneath a scatter of glass, the corner of a small black backup drive slid into view. Luis saw it. Diane did too. And before anyone else moved, she lunged toward the broken window. Diane lunged for the broken window, like the small black drive was a burning match near dry paper. Luis moved faster. He slapped his hand down over it, glass biting into his palm just enough to make him flinch. No, he said. One word. Shaking but clear. Diane froze with her fingers inches from his wrist. Officer Grace Miller stepped between them. Back away from the counter. Diane's face changed again. Sweetness disappeared. He is stealing evidence, she snapped. That boy just contaminated it. Luis lifted his hand slowly. Beneath his palm, the backup drive sat beside James Hale's fallen photograph. No bigger than a pack of gum, black, scratched, almost invisible under glittering glass. A tiny white label was taped across it. Camera, for autosave. The station went still around those 4 words. Even Officer Tyler Briggs paused with one cuff already locked around Marcus's wrist. Marcus stood near the doorway, half inside the store, half under the red-blue flash of the cruiser lights. His wounded hand hung at his side. His eyes went to the drive, then to Luis. "Do not wipe it," he said quietly. "Hold the edges." Luis Obath. Diane laughed too loudly. "Listen to this." Now the gas station man is giving forensic instructions. Miller held out an evidence bag from her kit. "Place it in here." Diane stepped forward. "Absolutely not. I want my lawyer here before anyone plays some fake video." Mrs. Anita Brooks whispered from the coffee counter. "Why would you be scared of a video if you did nothing?" The words were soft, but they cut through the room. Diane turned on her. "Because people like him edit things." Marcus did not answer. He looked at the DVR under the counter, then at the license frame still hanging crooked on the wall. The keypad behind it blinked the same warning. "Enter owner access code." Miller noticed his eyes move. She noticed Diane noticed too. "Is this drive connected to that system?" she asked. Marcus nodded once. "It mirrors the last 5 minutes after a panic save." Briggs narrowed his eyes. "Panic save?" Marcus looked at the shattered window. "For robberies. Threats. Anything the main monitor might not survive. If you were standing in that store, watching a woman fight harder to stop a tiny black drive than to prove her innocence, what would you think she was really afraid of?" Miller sealed the bag. For one breath, hope returned. Then Briggs pulled Marcus farther from the counter. "He is still being detained until we verify all of this." Diane seized on that. "Yes. Take him outside. He should not be near the equipment." Luis stepped forward. "But he knows the code." "Exactly," Diane said. "He knows how to erase it." Miller turned the evidence bag onto the light. The label had a second line, half covered by dust. "Backup A. Safe log required." "Where is the safe?" she asked. Marcus did not move. He only tilted his head toward the floor behind the counter. "Under the coffee machine." Diane's breath caught. Barely, but everyone heard it. Miller pulled the coffee machine aside. Beneath it was a small steel safe bolted into the cabinet. Its keypad glowed amber, not green. A message flashed across the tiny screen. 3 failed attempts. Lockout pending. Luis stared at it. Nobody touched that today. Diane's face went pale beneath her makeup. Briggs looked from the safe to Diane, then to Marcus, who tried to open it. Marcus lifted his cuffed hand as far as Briggs would allow. His voice was low, steady, and carried through the whole broken store. "Check the timestamp." Miller pressed one button. The screen blinked, then showed the last failed entry. 6:41 p.m. 2 minutes before the glass broke. 2 minutes before the glass broke. Officer Grace Miller read the time aloud, and the words settled over the store like smoke. Diane Whitaker stopped moving. Luis stared at the safe. Marcus lowered his cuffed hand, but his eyes went somewhere far beyond the broken window, beyond the lights, beyond everyone waiting to decide what kind of man he was. 6:41 p.m. That number pulled him backward. Not to the attack. Not to Diane. To a hospital room 3 years earlier, where his father's hand had felt lighter than paper in his own. James Hale had been breathing through a clear tube, his work shirt folded on the chair beside the bed. The same shirt Marcus wore now, faded gray, name patched soft from years of washing. On the blanket lay the brown leather notebook, cracked at the spine, stained with coffee, fuel, rain, and 40 years of survival. "Promise me," James had whispered. Marcus had leaned close. "I am here. Not the pumps," his father said. "The people." Marcus had not understood at first. James turned his eyes toward the notebook. "They will come for the land. They will call it progress. They will call you the problem. Do not answer with anger. Keep records." Back in the store, The safe glowed amber under the coffee machine. 3 failed attempts. Lockout pending. Marcus heard his father's voice inside that small warning light. Keep records. Diane broke the silence first. This is ridiculous. A clock on a safe proves nothing. Officer Miller looked at her. It proves someone tried to open it. Then asked the boy. Diane snapped, pointing at Luis. He was behind the counter. Luis flinched, but Marcus spoke before fear could swallow him. Luis does not know that code. Diane smiled. How convenient. Marcus looked at her then. Really looked. No rai. No panique. Only a grief so old it had learned how to stand upright. You knew the safe was there. Diane's eyes narrowed. I knew nothing. Mrs. Anita Brooks stepped closer, her voice trembling. James kept a safe under that counter too. Everyone turned to her. Anita looked at the fallen photograph, still lying beside the blood-spotted receipt. He used to keep church gas vouchers in it. For mothers, old folks, anyone short at the end of the month. Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. That was the wound Diane had never seen. This station was not just pumps and tile. It was his father slipping $5 of gas to a nurse after midnight. It was Evelyn Hale walking receipts to the tax office when the bank said black families were too risky. It was a little boy watching his father clean graffiti off the wall and open the doors anyway. Officer Briggs shifted, less certain now, but the cuff still held Marcus's wrist. Diane saw the room softening and struck where it hurt. How touching, she said. A poor little family legend does not make him innocent. Marcus did not answer. Miller reached for the evidence bag with the backup drive. We need the safe opened. Briggs glanced at Marcus. Can he enter the code cuffed? Diane snapped. He should not touch anything. Miller ignored her. Mr. Hale, is there another way? Marcus looked down at the old photograph. A corner of the frame had cracked open. Beneath the photo backing, something thin had slipped loose from age and impact. A folded yellow receipt. Anita saw it first. Wait, she whispered. Marcus picked it up carefully with his free hand. The paper was brittle, the ink faded, but one line was still clear. Paid in full. Land parcel 7B. James et Ali. Diane went perfectly still. Her eyes did not go to Marcus. They went to the receipt, then to the safe, then to the folder marked Whitaker complaints. Officer Miller noticed every glance. Before she could speak, Marcus's phone began buzzing on the floor behind the counter. The screen lit up with one name. Mom. Luis picked it up, his face draining as he read the message preview. Marcus, the news is saying you attacked a woman. Are the police taking you away? The message from Evelyn Hale glowed on Marcus's phone like a wound everyone could see. Marcus, the news is saying you attacked a woman. Are the police taking you away? Luis held the phone in both hands, frozen. Marcus did not reach for it. The cuff on his wrist clicked softly when Officer Briggs shifted beside him. Outside, more neighbors had gathered near the pumps, drawn by sirens, broken glass, and the kind of trouble people claim to hate, but always stop to watch. Diane Whitaker saw the phone. Then she saw her chance. There, she said, lifting her chin. It has already reached the public. People know what happened. Marcus looked at her quietly. People know what you told them. Diane's eyes flashed. Careful. She stepped closer to the doorway so the crowd could hear her. This man keeps files on women. He hides cameras. He has a safe under the counter. Now he wants everyone to believe I came here and attacked myself. A few people whispered. Someone outside said, why would she break a window for no reason? Another voice answered, maybe he did threaten her. The lie was growing legs. Marcus could feel it walking through the crowd. Officer Miller still held the evidence bag with the backup drive. She looked from Diane to the safe, then to the old receipt in Marcus's hand. Paid in full. Land parcel 7B. James et Ali. Her face tightened, but not enough to stop what came next. Diane raised her phone and tapped the screen. I am calling Councilman Reeve. He has every complaint I've filed. Noise. Loitering. Dangerous customers. Aggressive behavior. She turned toward Marcus. Your little paper trail works both ways. Luis stepped forward. Those complaints were lies. Diane snapped. One more word and I will add witness intimidation. Luis stopped. His courage folded under the weight of her confidence. Mrs. Anita Brooks looked at him, then at Marcus, then at the crowd. She wanted to speak. Everyone could see it. Her mouth opened. Diane saw it too. "Anita," she said softly, "think about your housing application." The old woman went still. Silence took her voice before fear could explain why. Officer Briggs pulled Marcus another step toward the cruiser. "We will handle this at the station." Marcus planted his feet, not resisting, just steadying himself. "My mother is alone." "Then cooperate," Briggs said. "This gets easier." Diane smiled. It always gets easier when people like him stop pretending they are in charge. That one sentence made Officer Miller look up. She heard something under it. Not anger. Ownership. The kind Diane believed she had over the block, over the story, over everyone who needed too much to fight back. Miller turned to the safe again. The amber screen blinked. 3 failed attempts. Lockout pending. Then a new line appeared beneath it. Remote access request detected. Luis whispered, "Nobody here did that." Diane's smile vanished for one breath. Then her phone rang in her hand. The caller ID read, "Councilman Reeve." She answered quickly and turned away, but not before Marcus heard her whisper, "The drive is still here." Officer Miller heard it too. So did the teenager recording near Pump 3. Before anyone could react, Briggs opened the cruiser door and guided Marcus toward the back seat. Marcus looked once at his father's photograph on the counter, once at the sealed evidence bag, and once at camera 4. The little red light blinked again. Then the dead monitor behind Luis flickered back to life, showing a frozen frame of Diane's hand reaching toward the safe at 6:41 p.m. The frozen frame on the monitor showed Diane Whitaker's hand reaching toward the safe 2 minutes before the glass broke. For one breath, the whole station leaned toward the truth. Then Diane moved faster than shame. "That proves nothing," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut the silence. "I was pointing at the machine because he was hiding behind it." Officer Tyler Briggs kept one hand on Marcus's cuffed wrist and the other on the cruiser door. Marcus stood half bent beside the back seat, red and blue light sliding across his face. His mother's message still glowed on the phone inside the store. His father's photograph still lay on the counter near the broken glass. Every piece of his life was inside, and he was being pulled away from it. "Play the video," Luis said. His voice cracked, but he said it. Diane swung toward him. "Be quiet. The frame is right there. A frame is not a story." She turned to the crowd outside, lifting both hands like she was addressing a homeowner's meeting instead of a crime scene. "This is what he does. He collects little pieces, twists them, and makes decent people look guilty. Look at the files. Look at the hidden safe. Look at the cameras." This was a trap. The crowd murmured. A man near Pump 5 lowered his phone. A woman in a white sweater whispered, "Maybe she is right." Mrs. Anita Brooks pressed one hand to her chest, staring at Marcus like she wanted to apologize, but could not find enough courage to make sound. Officer Grace Miller stood by the monitor, eyes fixed on the frozen image. "Mrs. Whitaker, why did you say the drive was still here?" Diane's face tightened. "I never said that." The teenager near Pump 3 raised his phone. "You did. I recorded it." His mother grabbed his sleeve. "Put that away." Diane pointed at him. "That child is recording private police business." Briggs looked over. Everyone stopped filming. Several phones dropped at once. The room shrank again. Diane smiled. Her false victory returned piece by piece. "Thank you, officer. Now remove him before he tampers with more evidence." Marcus looked through the broken window at Luis. "Protect the drive." Briggs pulled him harder. "Enough." Marcus did not fight. He only looked at Officer Miller. "The safe log has more than the time." Diane laughed. "Of course it does. More magic from the gas station genius." Marcus's voice stayed low. "It records the access source." Miller's eyes moved to the safe. Amber light. Lockout pending. Remote access detected. She reached toward the keypad, but Diane stepped into her path. "You need a warrant for that." Miller stared at her. "For evidence at an active scene?" Diane lifted her phone. "Councilman Reeve is already on his way. If you open anything without authorization, your badge will be part of the complaint." That threat struck Briggs first. His jaw tightened. Miller's hand stopped inches from the keypad. Diane saw it and took the room completely. "There it is," she said. "Procedure." Finally. Then she turned to Marcus. You're done here. Your little station, your little files, your little act. Done. The words hit harder than the cuff. Marcus's wounded hand flexed once. Not in anger. In pain. Behind the counter, Luis looked down and saw the folded land receipt near James Hale's photo. Paid in full. Land parcel 7B. He slipped it under the register with shaking fingers before Diane could notice. Micro hope, small as a match flame. Then Briggs pushed Marcus into the back seat of the cruiser. The door closed between him and the store with a heavy metal sound. Diane exhaled like a woman who had just won an election. The monitor inside flickered again. The frozen image vanished. A loading bar appeared under Camera 4's file. Recovering audio. Officer Miller saw it. Diane saw Miller see it. Outside, the cruiser engine started. Then a voice cracked through Miller's radio. Clear this time. Loud enough for everyone near the pumps to hear. Unit 12, stop transport. Owner record, just verified. Do not move him until supervisor reviews the file. Stop transport. The words came through Officer Miller's radio, so clearly that even the customers at Pump 5 heard them. The cruiser engine kept humming, but nobody moved. Officer Tyler Briggs stood with one hand on the rear door, Marcus Elijah Hale cuffed inside the back seat. His face lit red, then blue, then red again. Diane Whitaker's smile broke at the edges. That is a mistake, she said quickly. Dispatch does not know what happened here. Officer Miller stepped out of the store with the sealed evidence bag in one hand and the radio in the other. Briggs opened the door. Briggs hesitated. Diane lifted her phone. Officer, I strongly advise you not to let him near that building. Miller looked at her. I did not ask for advice. The crowd went quieter. Not silent yet, but quieter. Phones lowered a few inches. The woman in the white sweater stopped whispering. Luis stood behind the broken counter with blood on his palm and his eyes locked on the monitor. Inside, Camera 4's file had moved from a frozen frame to a black screen with a thin white line crawling across the bottom. Recovering audio. Recovering video. Marcus stepped out of the cruiser slowly when Briggs opened the door. One cuff still circled his wrist. He did not pull away. He did not speak first. He looked toward the store, toward his father's photograph, toward the small black drive in Miller's hand. Diane rushed to fill the silence. This is theater. He set all of this up. He knew where the cameras were. He knew where the safe was. He had folders with my name on them. Mrs. Anita Brooks finally lifted her head. Because you kept coming here. Diane snapped, Anita, enough. The old woman flinched, but this time she did not step back. Officer Miller noticed. So did Marcus. Micro Hope stood there in a coffee-stained cardigan, trembling but alive. The radio crackled again. Superviseur en route. Property record cross-check complete. Business license and land parcel record match. Do not remove subject from scene until footage is reviewed. The word subject hung in the air, cold and ugly. Marcus lowered his eyes for 1 second. Miller did too. Then she turned to the store. Luis, keep that monitor on. Diane's voice cracked for the first time. You cannot play private surveillance for a crowd. Miller answered. This is an active investigation. It is fake. Then you should want to play it. That hit the room hard. A few people looked at Diane instead of Marcus. The teenager near Pump 3 raised his phone again, slower this time. His mother did not stop him. If you were standing in that station right now, with the screen waking up and the woman who called the police suddenly afraid of the video, who would you believe? Diane moved toward the counter, but Briggs stepped in front of her. She stared at him like betrayal had put on a uniform. You were doing your job 5 minutes ago. Briggs swallowed. Ma'am, stand back. The monitor flashed. A burst of static filled the store speakers. Then Diane's own voice came out, thin and warped but clear enough. The drive is still here. Every head turned. Diane went pale. That was taken out of context. Marcus stood by the doorway, one wrist still cuffed, his wounded hand wrapped in a towel Luis had thrown to him. He said only one thing. Let it finish. No anger. No pride. Just wait. Officer Miller walked inside and placed the evidence bag on the counter beside the old land receipt, the cracked photograph, and the blood-spotted pump receipt. 3 small pieces of a life Diane had tried to reduce to a police report. The screen flickered again. This time, the frozen image returned. Diane at 6:41 p.m., leaning over the broken window side before the window was broken. Her hand near the safe. Her face turned toward the camera. The progress bar reached 98%. Outside, the pumps clicked off one by one. No one spoke. Diane reached for the power cord. Miller caught her wrist before she could touch it. "Before anyone judges him," Miller said, eyes fixed on the screen, "watch this." The audio cleared. The video began to move. The video began with no music, no drama, just a gray security image from camera 4 and the soft hum of a gas station before everything broke. Diane Whitaker appeared on the screen at 6:41 p.m., 3 minutes before her first scream, standing alone near the counter while Marcus was outside helping an elderly man at Pump 1. She looked over her shoulder, reached through the service slot, and pressed her fingers against the safe panel onto the coffee machine. Once, twice, a third time. The keypad flashed amber. Failed entry. Nobody in the store moved. Officer Grace Miller leaned closer to the screen. "You were at the safe before the window broke." Diane's mouth opened, then closed. "That is not what it looks like." The video kept going. Marcus walked back inside with a paper towel in his hand, laughing softly with the elderly customer. Diane stepped away from the counter as if she had touched nothing. Then her voice came through the speaker, clear and ugly. "Turn on Pump 2. You owe this neighborhood free gas." The crowd outside lowered their phones. Not to stop recording, to listen. Marcus's voice came next, quiet even on the grainy audio. "Ma'am, you have to pay for gas like everyone else." Diane's face on the screen twisted. "You people only understand consequences." Mrs. Anita Brooks covered her mouth. Luis stared at the floor, tears bright in his eyes, because the truth was finally making sound. Diane tried to step toward the monitor. "Turn it off. That recording is incomplete." Miller did not blink. "Step back. It is fake." Then stop interrupting it. The next seconds played exactly as the room remembered, except now nobody could hide inside uncertainty. Diane grabbed the metal squeegee. Marcus raised his hand, not toward her, but toward the panic save button beneath the counter. The DVR beeped. Diane swung. The first crack ran across the glass. A child cried on the audio. The second swing shattered the window inward. The screen caught Marcus shielding his face while glass spilled across the counter. Then Diane threw the squeegee down, clutched her wrist, and screamed, "He attacked me." The silence that followed was heavier than the sirens had ever been. Officer Tyler Briggs looked at Marcus's cuffed wrist like it belonged to a different mistake. Miller turned to him. "Remove that cuff." Briggs did it without a word. The click sounded small, but everyone heard it. Marcus rubbed his wrist once, then stopped, as if even comfort felt too much in front of people who had just watched him be humiliated. Diane whispered, "He still kept files on me." Marcus finally looked at her. "Because you kept coming back." Miller picked up the land receipt from beside James Hale's cracked photograph. "Paid in full. Land parcel 7B. James Ade." She turned to the radio. "Dispatch. Confirm current ownership of Hale's Fuel and Market." "Static." Then the answer came, clean and official. "Confirmed. Registered owner, Marcus Elijah Hale. Business license active. Property deed current. Sole owner of record." Phones lowered all around the pumps. The woman in the white sweater stopped whispering. The teenager near Pump 3 breathed out, "He owns it." Diane's face went white. Not surprised. Exposed. Miller noticed that too. She lifted the sealed evidence bag with the backup drive and placed it beside the safe log. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said, each word measured, "you called us here to arrest the owner of the property you broke into, tried to access, and then damaged." Diane shook her head. "No, he trapped me." Marcus's voice stayed low. "I asked you to leave." Anita stepped forward at last. "He did. I heard him." Luis raised his bleeding palm. "I heard him too." The room had not forgiven itself yet, but it had started telling the truth. Miller turned back to Diane. "One question." Diane looked at the monitor, then the drive, then Marcus. "What?" Miller held up the safe log. "How did you know the backup drive was still here before anyone told you it existed?" Diane Whitaker stared at the safe log as if the numbers might rearrange themselves if she looked long enough. Officer Grace Miller's question hung in the air. How did you know the backup drive was still here before anyone told you it existed? Diane swallowed. For the first time all night, she had no clean answer. I assumed, she said. Anyone would assume. Miller looked at the sealed drive, the amber safe screen, the land receipt, the old photograph, the blood on Marcus's towel. No, she said. Anyone would not. A car door slammed outside. Councilman Reeve hurried across the forecourt in a Navy suit, phone in hand, face tight with political panic. Diane turned toward him like a drowning woman seeing a rope. Daniel, thank God. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. Reeve stopped when he saw the monitor. The frozen image of Diane reaching toward the safe still filled the screen. The recording timestamp glowed in the corner. 6:41 p.m. M. He looked at the crowd. He looked at Marcus. Then he looked at Officer Miller. Has this been documented? Miller lifted the evidence bag. It has. Diane stepped closer to Reeve. You know what this station has done to our neighborhood. Reeve's face went hard. Diane, stop talking. That was the first public consequence. Not a handcuff. Not yet. A door closing in her face. The woman who had filled rooms with complaints suddenly stood alone in the room she had tried to control. Briggs lowered his eyes. Mr. Hale, he said quietly, I should not have moved you toward the cruiser before reviewing the footage. Marcus looked at him. There was no triumph in his face. Then write that down. Briggs nodded once. I will. Miller turned to Diane. Diane Whitaker, you are being detained on suspicion of criminal mischief, trespass, attempted evidence tampering, and filing a false police report. Additional charges may follow after review. Diane stepped back. You cannot do this. I called you. Miller reached for the cuffs. Yes, ma'am. You did. The metal clicked, and the sound was different now. Not cruel. Final. Around the pumps, phones lowered. The man who had whispered that Marcus looked guilty stared at the ground. The woman in the white sweater pressed a hand to her mouth. Mrs. Anita Brooks exhaled like she had been holding her breath for years. Luis leaned against the counter, his shaking hand still wrapped around a napkin. Diane tried one last time. Marcus, tell them this went too far. Tell them I did not mean for it to become this. Marcus picked up his father's cracked photograph. He wiped the frame with the edge of the towel, careful around the cut in the glass. You meant for them to take me away, he said. His voice was soft, but no one missed it. You just did not mean for them to see why. Councilman Reeve looked at the folder marked Whitaker complaints and then at Miller. Those complaints need to be reviewed by the city attorney. All of them. Miller nodded. And a remote access request. Reeve's face tightened. Send that log too. Diane's knees seemed to weaken, but Miller held her steady without roughness. Justice did not need to shout. It only needed to stop looking away. Miller removed the remaining cuff from Marcus's wrist and placed his keys, phone, and the folded land receipt on the counter in front of him. Mr. Hale, she said, now using his name the way the room should have used it from the beginning, your property rights are confirmed. Your evidence is secured. Your statement will be taken here, not from the back of a cruiser. Marcus looked down at his mother's message on the phone. His thumb hovered over the screen. For the first time that night, his hand trembled, not from fear, from release. Outside, a small boy near pump 3 pointed at the old photograph. Is that his dad? Anita answered before Marcus could. Yes, baby. And this place was his promise. Marcus closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, the crowd was no longer staring at him like a suspect. They were waiting for him to stand. Miller set the cracked photograph upright beside the register. The glass was broken, but James Hale's face was visible again. Then Marcus's phone buzzed once more. A new message from Evelyn appeared on the screen. Come home when you can. But first, finish what your father started. Marcus read his mother's message twice, then folded the phone into his palm and stood behind the broken counter where the whole night had tried to reduce him to a suspect. The glass was still on the floor. The red and blue lights still moved across the pumps. Diane Whitaker sat in the back of a cruiser now, silent, her face turned away from the crowd she had tried to command. Marcus did not look at her for long. He looked at Luis, at Mrs. Anita Brooks, at Officer Grace Miller, and then at the cracked photograph of his father standing upright beside the register. "My father started with one pump," Marcus said softly. "He said a business is not a building. It is how people are treated when they walk in." Nobody spoke. Even the people who had whispered against him stood still now, carrying the weight of their own silence. Officer Miller placed the folded land receipt beside the photograph. "Then let the record show," she said. "This is his property, his evidence, and his statement will be taken with respect." Briggs stepped forward, eyes lowered. "Mr. Hale, I was wrong." Marcus looked at him for a long second. "Then be right for the next person." That sentence stayed in the air longer than an apology could. 3 months later, Hale's Fuel and Market opened its doors again under a new pane of glass, so clear it reflected the morning sky. The old neon sign had been repaired, but not replaced. Marcus wanted the scars to have memory. The city reviewed every complaint Diane had filed. Several were thrown out. The Homeowners Association lost its special influence over small business hearings. A new rule required body camera review and evidence checks before any business owner could be removed from their own property during a dispute. Diane paid restitution, faced charges for the false report and tampering attempt, and was barred from contacting the station. Marcus did not attend to watch her fall. He had work to do. On reopening day, Evelyn Hale sat in a folding chair by the front window with a blanket over her knees, smiling at every customer as if she had known them for years. Louis stood behind the counter wearing a new name tag that read assistant manager. When he saw it for the first time, he blinked hard and said, "Mr. Hale, you did not have to do that." Marcus handed him the register keys. "You protected the truth when your hands were shaking. That is management." Mrs. Anita Brooks came in carrying peach cobbler wrapped in foil. She stopped in front of Marcus, her eyes wet. "I should have spoken sooner." Marcus took the dish from her hands. "You spoke when it mattered." Behind the counter, James Hale's photograph had been repaired. The crack in the glass was still visible, running across the corner, but Marcus had left it there. Next to it, framed in simple black wood, was the brittle yellow receipt, paid in full. Land Parcel 7B. Beneath both frames sat a new small sign in Marcus's own handwriting, 10 gallons home. The fund was simple. If someone needed gas to reach a hospital, a job interview, a night shift, a school pickup, or home, they could ask. No questions in front of strangers. No shame at the counter. That afternoon, as sunlight warmed the clean tile, a young mother came in holding a little boy by the hand. Her debit card had been declined outside at Pump 3. Her voice dropped to almost nothing. "I only need enough to get him to his grandmother's." Marcus glanced at the boy. The child stared at the old photograph and asked, "Is that your dad?" Marcus smiled. "Yes." The boy nodded. "He looks kind." Marcus took a 10 gallons home card from the box and slid it across the counter. He was. And today, so are we. Outside, Pump 3 clicked on. The mother covered her mouth, but Marcus only nodded toward the door. "Get home safe." Evelyn watched from the window, proud and quiet. Luis opened the door for the mother and child. Anita lowered her phone, not to record this time, but to be fully present. Marcus stepped outside into the soft evening light, his father's old keys warm in his hand, and the station that once watched him be humiliated now stood around him like a promise kept. Justice had come, dignity had returned, and kindness was already moving down the road in a car with just enough gas to make it home.